You think you understand it, don't you? You wake up, you work, you sleep. You mark the days on a calendar, count the seconds, track the minutes, live by the ticking clock. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what if everything you think you know about time is a lie? What if I told you that time as you experience it isn't real? That the very thing you've been using to measure your life, your joys, your regrets, your future, is nothing more than a clever illusion? You might call me crazy, but bear with me. Because this is exactly what Albert Einstein uncovered in his hidden vision. A vision that, when fully realized, shattered the very concept of time as we know it. And once you see what he saw, you'll never look at the world the same way again. Let's pause for a second, take a step back, and really think about what time is. We live our lives by it. Every moment is marked by its passing. Every event is framed within its structure. We go to work at 9, we eat lunch at 12, we get home by 6, and we sleep at 10. There's an order, a rhythm that we've been conditioned to follow. But what if I told you that everything you know about time, everything you've ever believed about it, could be turned upside down? You see, time is not as simple as it seems. To most of us, time feels like a relentless, linear progression. It's like a river flowing steadily from the past through the present and into the future. It's predictable. It's something we can measure, something we can plan for. After all, doesn't everyone know that time waits for no one? It's the clock that governs us that makes the world go round. But Einstein? He turned this idea on its head with one of the most profound discoveries of the 20th century. Time as we know it isn't constant. It's relative. The way you experience time isn't the same way I experience it. And it doesn't even stay the same for you. Depending on where you are and how fast you're moving, time can stretch and warp in ways that defy common sense. Think about this. Einstein's theory of special relativity tells us that time moves differently depending on how fast you're moving relative to something else. For example, imagine you're on a spaceship, zipping through space at 99% of the speed of light. Everything around you seems normal, right? But here's the twist. If you look at a clock on Earth from your spaceship, you'll see it ticking slower than your own clock. It's like a magic trick of the universe. As you approach the speed of light, time on your spaceship seems to slow down, while for people back on Earth, it's business as usual. If you spend what feels like a year traveling through space, by the time you return to Earth, decades, maybe even centuries, could have passed. You've just jumped into the future. Your time is not the same as someone else's. What's mind-blowing about this is that we don't notice it in our everyday lives. Why? Because we're not traveling anywhere near the speed of light. But here's the catch. The universe doesn't care about your everyday experience. It doesn't bend or break just to make you feel comfortable. The rules that govern reality don't change based on how much you want to control time. But let's take this even further, because the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. We all think of time as a river, right? A straight path that's always moving forward. But what if I told you that, according to Einstein, the flow of time might not even be linear? What if time isn't a single stream, but instead, it's a vast, interconnected web, a set of possibilities all happening at once? To really get this, we need to dig into something called space-time. Einstein didn't just revolutionize our understanding of time, he fundamentally redefined the relationship between time and space itself. Time is no longer something separate, something that just happens as we move through space. Instead, time and space are woven together into one fabric called space-time. And guess what? That fabric warps. It stretches. It bends. It moves differently depending on the mass and energy around it. Think about a heavy ball placed on a trampoline. The ball sinks into the fabric of the trampoline, causing it to curve and warp. Now, imagine that ball is a planet and the trampoline is space-time. The larger the mass of the planet, the more space-time curves around it, affecting the flow of time. The closer you are to a massive object, like a planet or a star, the slower time will seem to pass relative to someone far away from that object. You're probably starting to feel a bit dizzy. Let's pause for a second. The universe isn't what it seems. Time is not this simple, ticking mechanism we can control or measure. Instead, it's malleable. It bends, it warps, it changes based on speed, mass, and gravity. You could say that time is a relational experience depending entirely on where you are, how fast you're moving, and what forces are acting on you. And here's where it gets really interesting. Einstein's breakthrough shows that you can never really experience time the same way as anyone else. You and I are living in parallel worlds, experiencing the passage of time in completely different ways, even though we're both in the same reality. That right now you're living? It's not the same right now that I'm experiencing. Your clock, your biological processes, the way you feel time passing, it's all different. And when you really dig into this, it starts to mess with your mind. You may think you have control over your life, over the moments you live, but when you grasp this, you start to wonder, how real is time really? What if you could live at a speed so fast that time as you know it would practically stop? What if you could step outside the flow of time altogether and see the entire picture all at once? What would that reveal about the way we live, about the way we measure our success, our meaning, our purpose? The deeper we go into Einstein's vision, the more you begin to see that time is not a constant, predictable rhythm. It's a fluid, subjective experience. Time is not some unmovable force, but a canvas that we are constantly painting on. So when you say, I don't have enough time, or time is running out, remember, those are just the limits you've accepted. They're the cage that society has built around you. And once you realize that time is something you don't control, but can experience differently, the question becomes, how do you want to live in a world where time is just an illusion? Now that we've questioned time itself, let's dive even deeper into another fundamental aspect of our everyday lives, the present. This is where things get truly mind-bending, because we've all been taught to think that the present is the only thing that's real. Right now, this very second, the moment you're reading these words. It's what we live for, isn't it? We say live in the moment, be present, because that's the only part of time we can grasp with our senses, the only part of the timeline that truly feels like it's happening. But what if I told you that the present as you understand it doesn't actually exist? What if the present is just another layer of illusion, a fleeting and deceptive moment that your brain creates to make sense of a much larger, infinitely complex reality? That everything you experience right now might already be history in a sense, and that what you think is the present is just a trick your mind plays on you? You see, this is exactly what Einstein's theory of relativity uncovers. The present is not a fixed, universal moment that we all share in real time. To Einstein, time does not flow in the same way for everyone. In fact, the present isn't just what's happening right now, it's part of the illusion of time itself. The present is relative. How can this be? Let's unpack this. Imagine you're looking at a distant star. The light that reaches your eyes now may have left that star millions of years ago. So, is that light present? What about when you look at the moon? Its light is around 1.3 seconds old by the time it hits your eyes. That means, in a very real sense, when you look at anything, even your own reflection, you're not seeing it as it is right now, but as it was a moment ago. The present is always slipping away from you. But wait, it gets even stranger. Because this isn't just a matter of how far away something is. Einstein's theory of relativity tells us that the concept of simultaneity itself, what happens at the same time, is completely relative. So, not only does the present moment change depending on your perspective in space, but the idea that two events are occurring simultaneously is also an illusion. Let's say you're standing next to someone on the sidewalk watching a car drive by. You both agree that the car is moving. But if that car were traveling at a very high speed, close to the speed of light, the person in the car would experience time differently than you. From their perspective, the events unfolding around them, like the light, the sound, the movement of the car, are all happening at a different rate. And if the car were moving close enough to the speed of light, well, the concept of a shared present just evaporates entirely. What's happening in that moment for you is completely out of sync with what's happening for them. So who's to say what's real, what's present? The past, present, and future, all existing at once? This is where Einstein's ideas start to really challenge your entire worldview. Time, it turns out, doesn't behave like we think it does. It's not some kind of river that only flows in one direction, always from past to present to future. In Einstein's model, the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously in what is called space-time. Let that sink in. The past isn't gone. It's not lost to you. The future is not something that hasn't happened yet. In the world of space-time, they all exist on equal footing, stacked alongside each other in the fabric of the universe. What's more, there is no objective now. Each person's experience of time, each person's present, is tied to their perspective, and they're all different. You might be thinking, how can this be? If the past and future are real and happening simultaneously, then how can I have any free will? How can I make decisions? After all, if everything is already there, unfolding all at once, doesn't that take away my ability to choose? The answer is, no, it doesn't. But it does change how you think about choice and existence. Living beyond the present. What's the point of now? Now, let's go back to your life, to your sense of the present. In our daily experience, we feel the present moment slipping through our fingers. It's all we have, but it's gone before we even realize it. We obsess over what we can't control, the past mistakes, the future uncertainties. We constantly ask ourselves questions like, what's next? What's coming? What am I missing? But Einstein's view of time suggests that this frantic grasping for the present is misguided. The present isn't the point after all. We're so attached to our little slices of time, But the universe isn't hung up on one moment like we are. When you realize that the past and future are not separate from the present, you begin to see that they are all part of a larger whole. Imagine stepping outside your life for a moment, outside your experience of linear time. What if instead of seeing the present as this fleeting thing you desperately try to hold on to, you realize that you are part of a bigger, eternal picture? Every moment you live is a thread in the larger tapestry of space-time. Your now is just a tiny part of this vast, interconnected web, but it's still your part. And that's where your power lies, not in trying to hold on to the present, but in understanding how your actions, your choices, ripple through the fabric of space-time. So, what's the point of the present if it's just an illusion? The point is that you're part of it, you're part of the unfolding universe. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter whether it's now or then or in the future. The universe exists outside the constraints of our perception. It's a reality beyond time. Everything that's ever happened or will happen is already laid out in the structure of space-time. And you, right now, in this moment, are simply experiencing it. How does this change our lives? So, how does all this knowledge affect how we live day to day? Does it mean we should stop worrying about the present or the future? Does it make life less meaningful if time is just an illusion? Not at all. It actually gives you a deeper understanding of your place in the universe. Instead of obsessing over time, you can focus on what really matters: experience. The point is not to chase after each passing second, trying to capture it before it slips away. The point is to realize that every experience, every moment, every thought you have is part of an infinite, timeless whole. It's the experience that matters, not the moment. What if, instead of worrying about when or where you are in time, you simply embrace the truth that you are already a part of everything? The past isn't gone. The future isn't some distant horizon you're always trying to reach. It's all there in front of you right now. And once you realize that the present isn't the only thing that matters, maybe, just maybe, you can start living beyond the illusions, beyond the clock, beyond the ticking of time. Maybe the real question isn't what time is it, but what are you going to do with the infinite now that you have? Because in the end, the present is just an illusion. And in that illusion, you hold the power to experience eternity. Let's say you're standing next to someone on the sidewalk watching a car drive by. You both agree that the car is moving. But if that car were traveling at a very high speed, close to the speed of light, the person in the car would experience time differently than you. From their perspective, the events unfolding around them, like the light, the sound, the movement of the car, are all happening at a different rate. And if the car were moving close enough to the speed of light, well, the concept of a shared present just evaporates entirely. What's happening in that moment for you is completely out of sync with what's happening for them. So who's to say what's real, what's present? The past, present, and future, all existing at once? This is where Einstein's ideas start to really challenge your entire worldview. Time, it turns out, doesn't behave like we think it does. It's not some kind of river that only flows in one direction, always from past to present to future. In Einstein's model, the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously in what is called space-time. Let that sink in. The past isn't gone. It's not lost to you. The future is not something that hasn't happened yet. In the world of space-time, they all exist on equal footing, stacked alongside each other in the fabric of the universe. What's more, there is no objective now. Each person's experience of time, each person's present, is tied to their perspective, and they're all different. You might be thinking, how can this be? If the past and future are real and happening simultaneously, then how can I have any free will? How can I make decisions? After all, if everything is already there, unfolding all at once, doesn't that take away my ability to choose? The answer is, no, it doesn't. But it does change how you think about choice and existence. Living beyond the present. What's the point of now? Now, let's go back to your life, to your sense of the present. In our daily experience, we feel the present moment slipping through our fingers. It's all we have, but it's gone before we even realize it. We obsess over what we can't control. The past mistakes, the future uncertainties. We constantly ask ourselves questions like, what's next? What's coming? What am I missing? But Einstein's view of time suggests that this frantic grasping for the present is misguided. The present isn't the point after all. We're so attached to our little slices of time, but the universe isn't hung up on one moment like we are. When you realize that the past and future are not separate from the present, you begin to see that they are all part of a larger whole. Imagine stepping outside your life for a moment, outside your experience of linear time. What if instead of seeing the present as this fleeting thing you desperately try to hold on to, you realize that you are part of a bigger, eternal picture? Every moment you live is a thread in the larger tapestry of space-time. Your now is just a tiny part of this vast, interconnected web, but it's still your part. And that's where your power lies, not in trying to hold on to the present, but in understanding how your actions, your choices, ripple through the fabric of space-time. So, what's the point of the present if it's just an illusion? The point is that you're part of it, you're part of the unfolding universe. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter whether it's now or then or in the future. The universe exists outside the constraints of our perception. It's a reality beyond time. Everything that's ever happened or will happen is already laid out in the structure of space-time. And you, right now, in this moment, are simply experiencing it. How does this change our lives? So, how does all this knowledge affect how we live day to day? Does it mean we should stop worrying about the present or the future? Does it make life less meaningful if time is just an illusion? Not at all. It actually gives you a deeper understanding of your place in the universe. Instead of obsessing over time, you can focus on what really matters: experience. The point is not to chase after each passing second, trying to capture it before it slips away. The point is to realize that every experience, every moment, every thought you have is part of an infinite, timeless whole. It's the experience that matters, not the moment. What if, instead of worrying about when or where you are in time, you simply embrace the truth that you are already a part of everything? The past isn't gone. The future isn't some distant horizon you're always trying to reach. It's all there in front of you right now. And once you realize that the present isn't the only thing that matters, maybe, just maybe, you can start living beyond the illusions, beyond the clock, beyond the ticking of time. Maybe the real question isn't what time is it, but what are you going to do with the infinite now that you have? Because in the end, the present is just an illusion. And in that illusion, you hold the power to experience eternity. Let's dive deeper into the real weight of what Einstein was saying when he revealed time for what it really is. Once you start to see that time is not some steady linear force, once you start to grasp the reality that time is relative and malleable, you begin to understand something even more profound. Time is the ultimate prison. It's not just that time moves differently for different observers or that the present is relative. The bigger, more uncomfortable realization is that our entire concept of life, success, and meaning is built around the illusion of time. We are enslaved to it. We spend our entire lives measuring everything by time. The ticking of the clock isn't just something we hear, it's something we feel. You probably don't even realize it, but you live your life by it. You set alarms to wake up, rush through your day trying to get things done, measure your success in terms of how much you can fit into a day, a year, a decade. You mark milestones in your life by age, not by experience. I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50. It's all a countdown, a race. And this race is against time. It's funny, isn't it? Time is the very thing that we've built our entire sense of purpose around, and yet, it's the very thing that is limiting us. You've been taught to measure your worth by the hours you work, by how much you produce, by the tangible outcomes of your life. You're trapped in a system where your value is tied to how much time you can fill up. But here's the truth. Time is not a ruler. It's a chain. Why we feel trapped by time. Take a second and think about your typical day. You wake up, get ready for work, rush to a meeting, check the clock, and try to squeeze everything into your schedule. You're constantly battling against the clock. Every second is precious, and you're always told you're running out of time. You live with a sense of urgency, don't you? Always looking forward to the weekend, the next vacation, the next big milestone. Always waiting for that next moment when everything will be just right. But here's the problem. Time doesn't care about your urgency. Time doesn't answer to your personal desires. It doesn't slow down for you when you're enjoying yourself, nor does it speed up when you're stuck in a meeting. In fact, time moves relentlessly forward, completely indifferent to your desires, your achievements, or your frustrations. You could be in the most beautiful, life-affirming moment, standing on top of a mountain, witnessing the birth of your child, feeling pure joy, and what does time do? Keeps ticking. The second you realize you're in a perfect moment, that moment is already in the past. The now you thought you were living in is already gone. This is the trap of time. It steals your moments the instant you realize they're worth holding on to. But what if this isn't just a minor inconvenience? What if it's not just the fact that you can't savor the moment? What if, in fact, time itself is the very thing keeping you from truly living? Think about it. Every day we're told that time is money, that we should use it wisely, that we should maximize every minute. But in doing so, we've lost the ability to actually experience life. We don't live anymore, we manage time. Every action we take is dictated by the ticking clock. From your career to your relationships, from the way you spend your free time to how much sleep you get, it's all shaped by the relentless march of seconds, minutes, and hours. We've built a world based on the idea that the more we fill our time, the more we matter. But does filling your time really make you feel more alive? Or does it just numb you to the things that matter most? You're conditioned to think that if you're not doing, if you're not producing, if you're not achieving, then you're wasting time. But here's the secret that Einstein's vision reveals. What if time itself is the waste? The chains of time. Let's talk about the way time distorts your perception of life. It's not just that time controls your schedule. It's that time controls your perception of self-worth. From a young age, we're told that we must grow up, get educated, get a job, make money, find success, and, above all, keep moving forward. The constant message is that you need to be progressing, and if you're not, you're falling behind. We define our lives by where we are in time, by how old we are, how much we've accomplished, how much we've spent in terms of time. But here's the harsh truth. This belief that we need to accomplish something in time is the very thing that makes us feel stuck. Your identity, your purpose, your value, all of these are intrinsically tied to a constant movement through time. But when time itself becomes the measuring stick for everything that matters, it locks you into a system where you are simply a byproduct of the time you've spent. And suddenly, your worth is not about who you are, but about how much of your life has been used up, how much has been spent towards something you might not even care about. Here's the irony. The more you try to spend your time wisely, the more you become a slave to it. You're not living, you're ticking boxes, escaping the prison of time. Now, if time is this invisible chain that controls your every decision, the question is, how do you break free? Einstein gave us the answer, but it's not what most people expect. It's not about rushing to do more or trying to maximize every moment. In fact, the secret to breaking free of the prison of time lies in the opposite approach. The key is to realize that time is not something you need to measure. When you realize that time itself is relative, that it's something that bends, stretches, and exists as part of a larger, interconnected universe, you can start to escape the trap. Time, as you've been taught to understand it, is just a construct, a framework you've accepted to make sense of the world around you. But it doesn't control you. You are not your clock. You are not your age. You are not the sum of the seconds you've spent. Instead of trying to rush through life, what if you just stopped? What if, instead of measuring your days, you simply lived them? What if you stopped worrying about how much time you had left, and instead focused on the experiences you're having right now, in this moment? This is where Einstein's vision becomes revolutionary. Time only has the power you give it. Once you step outside the conventional understanding of time and recognize its relativity, you free yourself from the constant stress of trying to manage it. You stop chasing the clock and start embracing the experience, the journey, the process, not in a linear, start-to-finish sense, but as something deeper, richer, and far more meaningful. Reclaiming true freedom. The ultimate freedom is the freedom from time's chains. It's not about maximizing productivity, not about filling your calendar. It's about realizing that you don't need to be racing through life, measuring every moment and making every second count. The truth is, once you understand that time is an illusion, you can begin to step outside of it, not by running away from it, but by embracing a completely different relationship with it. When you start living beyond the constraints of time, when you see that your value doesn't come from how much you've spent or how much you've achieved, but from who you are in the moment, you begin to live life on your own terms. That is the power that Einstein's vision reveals. You can choose to live beyond the clock, beyond the chain, and beyond the prison of time. So now you've come face to face with the true nature of time. You've realized that time is not the unyielding, fixed entity we've been told it is. It's not a straight line that marches relentlessly from past to future, constantly slipping through our fingers. It's not the prison we've been conditioned to believe it is. Instead, time is an illusion, a construct, and the real question is not how much time do I have, but rather how do I experience the eternal now? You see, Einstein didn't just revolutionize our understanding of time in the physical sense. He gave us a blueprint for how we can begin to live our lives differently, beyond the illusion of time. And that's where the most profound shift happens, not just in science but in your experience of reality, the eternal now. What would it mean if you stopped thinking about time as a limiting factor? What would it mean if you stopped thinking of time as something you're running out of, something that you need to manage, and instead embraced the idea that time, past, present, and future, is always happening at once? Einstein's discovery about space-time tells us that the fabric of the universe doesn't divide neatly into past, present, and future. Instead, everything is laid out in a kind of cosmic blueprint, all happening together in one vast, interconnected whole. In this view, there's no true separation between what was, what is, and what will be. All of these moments, all of these experiences, exist simultaneously. When you understand this, it completely shatters your perception of time. Suddenly, the anxiety of not having enough time becomes irrelevant. The fear of wasting time fades away. The constant pressure to achieve, to move forward, to do something because time is slipping away, dissolves into the realization that time is simply a part of your experience, but not the master of it. This realization opens up the possibility of living in the eternal now. What does that mean? Living in the eternal now means embracing the moment fully and completely, without the need to measure it, to rush through it, or to extract something from it. It means realizing that you don't have to wait for some future moment to feel complete, or to achieve meaning. The meaning is already there, in the now, in the present moment, in the very act of being alive. The power of presence, living beyond time's control. Let's look at how this shift can change your daily life. Think about how you live right now. Do you live in a constant state of anticipation, waiting for the next event to bring you joy, success, or fulfillment? Are you trapped in a cycle of constantly checking the clock, managing your schedule, worried about the next step in your life? That's the illusion of time at work. You're looking out there, waiting for some future moment to validate you, to make you feel like you've arrived at some destination. But imagine for a moment, what if you stopped waiting for the future to give you permission to be happy? What if you stopped looking at the clock, stopped defining your life by the passage of time, and instead you allowed yourself to simply be, fully, without any concern for how much time you have left? This is what living in the eternal now means. You're no longer waiting for life to happen to you, you're actively participating in the experience of life as it unfolds. And here's the powerful part. When you embrace the eternal now, you begin to realize that you're no longer a slave to the ticking of the clock. You are no longer bound by the arbitrary measurements of seconds, minutes, and hours. Time stops being the thing you chase, the thing you fear, the thing that controls your every move. Instead, it becomes a canvas upon which you create your life. It becomes something fluid, something that you shape with your attention and awareness, rather than something that drags you along. Embracing the timeless you. The real magic, though, lies in how this shift impacts your sense of self. When you live in the eternal now, you cease to be defined by the passage of time. You're no longer your age, your job, your accomplishments, or your next goal. Those are all tied to the ticking clock, to the past and the future. But when you realize that time is not the ruler of your life, you begin to understand that you are not bound by time. You are boundless. You are not the sum of the years you've lived, or the plans you've made. You are the experience of now. You are the awareness, the consciousness that perceives life in its fullness. You are the presence that is never absent, the timeless being that exists beyond time's limitations. And once you realize this, you become free. This is where Einstein's ideas give you a revolutionary tool, the ability to escape the prison of time and realize that your true nature is not defined by your past or by what you expect from the future. You are the eternal present. Living timelessly, a practical approach. But how does this look practically? How do you begin to live timelessly? The first step is to start paying attention. You've probably been living on autopilot for much of your life, right? Constantly rushing from one task to the next, checking the clock, thinking about the future, stressing about the past. But what if you took a moment every day, just a few seconds, to stop and be fully present? I'm not talking about meditation or some long, complicated process. I'm talking about consciously stopping. Pause, take a breath, look around, feel the moment. Don't try to do anything with it. Just let it be. In that moment, you are stepping out of the constant rush of time and back into the experience of life itself. You're reconnecting with the eternal now, where time doesn't exist. You don't have to be in some exotic location or having some profound experience to access this timelessness. You can find it in the most ordinary of moments, drinking your morning coffee, walking down the street, or even sitting in traffic. These are not wasted moments. They are moments where you can reconnect with the essence of your existence, with the pure experience of being. And here's the best part. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize that life is not happening somewhere else. It's happening right here, right now. You are not waiting for time to validate you. You are already complete. You are already living, already experiencing, already whole. Stepping into the infinite. What's next? This is where the true power of Einstein's vision becomes clear. Time, as we know it, is a construct, a way for us to organize and measure experience. But when we let go of the idea that we are defined by time, we step into something much bigger, the infinite now. What does that mean for you personally? It means that the anxiety about the future, the regrets about the past, the rush to achieve, the fear of failure, all of that falls away. You don't need to chase anything anymore. You don't need to fill your life with tasks, goals, and accomplishments to feel that you're on track. You're already on track. The track is the now, and it's already complete. As you step into the infinite, you begin to realize that you are not just a product of time. You are a timeless being experiencing time from a perspective beyond it. And once you embrace this perspective, you can begin to live without the heavy burden of time dictating your every move. You begin to feel free in a way you've never felt before. A new way of living. In the end, the real question isn't what are you going to do with the time you have left? The real question is, how will you choose to experience this moment? And if time is the illusion that's been holding you back, then the truth is, there is no time left to waste. You are already in the eternal now. You've always been. And once you realize this, you are free. You are limitless. You are infinite.